Hello and welcome everyone to Charlie Mike's series on lessons learned about being a federal government contractor. I'm thrilled to have Heidi from HeiTech Services here with us. Heidi is a longtime GovCon contractor, and so she's going to share her pearls of wisdom with us on all things GovCon, things not to do in those oops moments throughout her GovCon career. So Heidi, I'm thrilled to have you here. The NVSBC is just tickled that you're able to share your pearls with us today. I'm going to kind of turn things over to you and have you kind of share what we should not do, in the world of GovCon.
Thank you. So I am a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. I'm proud to say that this year we're celebrating 25 years in business and still going strong. I'm pretty proud of that because most small businesses fail after the first few years. And the fact that I've made it 25 years and still going, I feel like the Energizer Bunny. But given that, when the NVSBC approached me and asked if I had anything I'd like to share, I said, well, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And so maybe by sharing some of those mistakes, especially with more of the startup businesses, these will be lessons learned that you can hopefully avoid making those same mistakes that I did. So that said, I want to start out with number one, which is using your resources with the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. There's a lot of us out there who already have teaming agreements, subcontract agreements, consulting agreements, you name it, employee handbooks. You should leverage those resources whenever you can and tailor them to fit your needs. There's no sense in paying an attorney or paying a consultant to come in and put those documents together for you when oftentimes many of us service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses are happy to share those things with you. So I paid a lot of money for some of these things with some attorneys at the very beginning, only to find out that they're very standard, your teaming agreements, your subcontract agreements. I'm very fastidious about making sure I read everything, especially since my name is going to go on the signature line. And so I encourage everyone, when you get these teaming agreements or agreements of any kind, read through them. If you have questions, ask us about them before you pay someone for any advice. I think that will go a long way at saving some dollars as you start out. Number two, something that I learned early on was to put together a board of advisors. I was fortunate that I had a relationship with some bankers and some relationships with industry associations, much like the National Veteran Small Business Coalition, to reach out and know industry experts that could come in and fill in the holes for you. So if you don't have a strong financial background, certainly you want a former CFO of a large corporation to come in and help advise you. The board of advisors provides a lot of accountability to you as a owner of a business. Oftentimes, as the owner of a business, we can kind of do what we want when we want to do it. But the board of advisors provides a lot of accountability, a lot of information sharing. They can look at your balance sheets, your financial statements. They can look at your proposals and give you feedback that will help you be more efficient in running the business. In concert with that, you should expect to pay your board of advisors. Don't expect these people to work for free. I think that they all understand that we're small business owners and we can't afford a large amount of money. My board met once a quarter. We would go out to dinner the night before and then spend the whole next day talking about the business. I put together an agenda, and I paid my board $3,000 a quarter to participate in the board, anywhere between 5 and 7 people. With varied backgrounds, one in operations, one in finance, maybe a lawyer, maybe somebody in business development, somebody that you think you need the strengths for. The next thing was, I think, moving as quickly as possible away from being a mom and pop type operation. And what I mean by that is I operated out of my home for the first couple of years, and I can remember one morning when one of my employees who had flown in from Kentucky I was standing in the kitchen in my pajamas till about 6 o'clock in the morning doing dishes, cleaning the house up before they came in. And the next thing you know, this guy walks in, oh, hey, boss, and then walked down to the basement where my office was. And I remember thinking, it's probably time I move out of the office. Um, I think being able to move away from being looked at as a mom and pop type organization, your customers will appreciate it better. Um, and you keep that separation of personal versus business. Number 4 was be present. I know a lot of owners who are absentee owners, and I think my personal experience is to lead from the front. And I think leading from the front, showing that I'm willing to put in the time, put in the effort, do the same level of responsibilities, writing proposals, I think that your staff will fall in line a lot faster by being present and being involved. There is a lot of work to running a small business. It's not for the faint of heart. So I think your employees will appreciate the fact that you need to be present every day. Number 5, don't employ yourself. A lot of business owners will keep one foot in and one foot out by saying, well, I'm going to bill myself part-time or full-time, and then I'll work evenings to do this. When I started the business, one of the best pieces of advice I got from a mentor was to burn my boats on the beach. As long as you have one foot in and one foot out, you'll never let go. It'll take you forever. Whereas if you burn your boats on the beach and you have no income coming in, it's easier for you to be more motivated to go out and look for that first contracting opportunity. So as tempting as it may be to keep one foot in, my recommendation is don't employ yourself. You can't market the government customers during the day if you're working full-time as well. Number 6, don't think that by selecting a big name company for back office support's a good thing. My first thought was, well, I want to be thought of as a reputable company. So I want a Nations Bank, I want a SunTrust, I want a whoever. Only to realize later on that because I was a small business, they treated me like a small business. So it took me probably the first 3 or 4 years before I regressed from working with those larger companies and went with companies my own size who valued me as a peer rather than looking at me as a small business. So when I had a question in the middle of the night, or if I had a question at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I knew that whoever I called was going to be available to pick up the phone. Whereas oftentimes my accountant that I had from a big corporation to do my taxes would wait until literally hours before taxes were due and then call me on the phone and say, oh, by the way, you're going to owe $4,000 in taxes this year. First year in business, $4,000 was a lot of money. Today, in hindsight, I look back and laugh at myself. But knowing that you're going to have the back office support at the level that you need, make sure that it's not necessarily about the big name of the company that's going to be working for you, but making sure they're available for you. Number 7, I hear a lot of times at sessions that I go to that take your first job as a subcontractor. And although that works for some, for me, I chose to be a prime contractor. I wanted to establish past performance right away, but I took jobs that were more suitable to me. The first one I think I took was a $2,500 purchase order. I had worked with this customer for 6 months and it became this, well, check with me next month. Well, check with me next month. And it got to about the 3rd month that I said, you know what, I don't think this is ever going to amount to anything, but I'm going to go back every month at the same time because I don't think they think I'm serious about this. Well, after 6 months, they called me in and said, do you take credit cards? And I remember thinking to myself, credit card, really? It was a $2,500 purchase order. They paid it overnight. I developed a 2-page document, and that resulted in my first $1 million prime contract award. A couple of years afterwards, I asked the customer, what was that $2,500 purchase order all about? And what they said was that they had had experience with a number of small businesses that failed. So this was a try me on to see whether or not it was the right fit. So again, pursue prime contract opportunities at the right size for you to be able to grow your business. Number 8, don't try to support the entire federal government. I made the mistake of picking 3 federal agencies, and I'm talking DOT, Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, that have a number of sub-agencies within them. And when you start marketing to those agencies, it becomes too much for you to try to keep up with and be responsive to. My advice is to select no more than 2 agencies and work those 2 agencies hard. Once you have mastered and won a few contracts within those 2 agencies, then diversify. But you're going to be expected to provide CAPE statements. You're going to be expected to follow up. You're going to be expected to provide responses to sources sought. Become an expert in those 2 agencies, their language, what they buy, instead of trying to spread yourself across every federal agency. It's just too hard. I made a point pre-COVID, of course, of making weekly stops with my customers so that they knew every Wednesday Heidi was going to be by. And oftentimes I'd pop my head in and say, hi, I don't want to bother you. I just want to say hi. 3 weeks in a row, it may not amount to anything. But the 4th week, they'll say, oh, I thought you might stop by today. I have an opportunity I wanted to discuss with you. So although it's post-COVID now, I would say maybe still reach out on a weekly basis just to say hello, move your name to the top of their email box so that they don't forget that you're there. Number 9, when you do win a contract, notify the bank immediately. We had a situation where we went from 100 employees to 200 employees just before Christmas. And I remember we were getting ready to have a holiday party, and a bunch of my senior people in the company were all behind a closed door. And I went in and I said, you guys are spoiling the holiday party for everyone else. What's going on in here? And what was said to me was bothersome, in that we might not make payroll. And I said, how is that possible? And they said, because the line of credit, of course, is based on accounts receivable, things that you've already invoiced for. We hadn't invoiced for that contract yet. Had we notified the bank in advance, we would have been fine. They would have said, fine, no worries, give us a copy of the contract and we'll make sure to cover the line of credit for you. We ended up getting a hold of the banker. He was on vacation with his family in Florida. He ended up covering the cost of the amount of payroll that we had for that particular payroll. But it would have been the first payroll these extra 100 employees would have had of learning that this small business might not make payroll. Don't fall victim to that. So whenever you win a contract, just notify the bank so that you have sufficient lines of credit in place to make payroll. Number 10 falls back to what we've already discussed on the prior page when selecting your back office support. Always have one on deck in the event the person you have a relationship with leaves the organization. We had a relationship with a banker for quite a few years, was always there for us. And then when we needed them, we won a contract, we tried calling them, the person wasn't available. It was like they got up in the middle of the night and left town. They went to work for another bank, didn't say goodbye, didn't say we love you, didn't say we're going to miss you. And all of a sudden we fell victim to now being at the bank's mercy of not having that personal connection with someone at the bank. My recommendation is, while you have a relationship with a bank, be marketing for a second bank, be marketing for a second attorney, be marketing for a second accountant, so that if the first relationship fails for any reason, you've got the second one to fall back on, and be candid with the second one that's on deck. Make sure they understand that they're first in line should this relationship you have with your existing representative goes away for any reason. And those kind of companies are generally very, very patient with waiting for their point to be as in that relationship with your company. Another recommendation was book your salaries on the books from day one as a liability. I didn't. I went 3 years without a salary. My business partner went 3 years without a salary, never to get that money back again. Your time is worth as much money as it is paying anyone else. And in hindsight, I wish that I had booked that money so that I could have recovered it when we were healthy enough to take the proceeds from the business. I think the first time that we decided to pay ourselves a salary was when I hired my first Unix programmer that we were paying six figures to. And I remember my business partner coming in and saying, Heidi, can we pay ourselves a salary now? And I think we paid ourselves a modest salary of about $45,000 a year. We tried to keep as much money in the company as we could at the time, just to make sure we had enough to continue on. So your time is worth the money. You may not have the money to pay yourself from day one, but go ahead and book your salaries. Boy, nothing could be more close than developing an exit strategy early at the start of the business. I was in my early 30s when I started the business. And when people would say to me, invest in your future, what are you going to do when you sell the business? I was so far away from thinking about that, about my exit strategy, that I didn't give it another thought. Oftentimes, businesses that don't give that a thought will come up to the point in time where they're ready to sell, where they're ready to retire, but they haven't made any plans for the future. I can tell you from personal experience, I have 4 children and none of my children wanted the business. I was hoping to pass the business down. Am I going to push it to my employees? Am I going to sell it? Just make sure that you talk to enough professionals out there that you have a plan. It's interesting. We all have this notion that when we start a small business, we're going to sell it one day. And I giggle to myself because I can remember my sons at the time playing basketball in AAU, wanting to go professional basketball. But the percentage of kids that make it pro is so small that this is the best analogy. That the number of small businesses that are able to sell their business one day is so small. Don't count on that being your only source of exit. So give that a lot of thought so that if it is to sell, that you're working from day one and being very disciplined at the type of contracts that you bring in, how you market the business, the players that you're dealing with, growth strategies beyond small business that will get you higher valuations. Just be thoughtful as you think about that. Number 13, no different than when we were in the military. Look for mentors early and ask them if you can have lunch. Take them to lunch quarterly. I have gotten together with so many senior executives from large businesses that I've met along the way and asked them, would you mind mentoring me? And I'm not looking for contract opportunities. I just need to pick your brain. I had a CEO of a Serco CEO, a former CEO, where I asked if I could participate in executive meetings. I had no idea what happened at an executive meeting. Do they talk about the same things we talk about? And he let me participate as an observer on the outside after signing an NDA that I could learn from what they discussed, just to value what kind of things that they were dealing with that I might not have even considered. Take them to lunch. Sometimes they're going to say things you don't want to hear, but take it as constructive criticism. They've been there, and I think you can learn a lot. Number 14, when work's being done, trust but verify. When someone says that they've taken care of something or deliverables been made, especially when you're starting a company up, your reputation is everything. Ask to see a copy of a deliverable. Look to see if the standard of quality of work is exactly what you would tolerate as a customer. Put yourself in the customer's shoes and make sure that you're taking a look at what work is being delivered to your customers. Go out and talk to your customers. And oftentimes your customers will give you the standard, oh, things are going great. Fine, things are going great. But if I had to change one thing to improve the delivery of services, make that customer give you something. Tell them that it will help you grow the business. Number 15, when partnering with a small company and you are the subcontractor, don't hesitate insisting on an escrow account. I don't know how many situations I have been in where when you're being invited to the dance, but you haven't gotten to the dance yet, everything looks great. Your partner looks great, everything's hunky-dory, and then you win the contract. And all of a sudden, the company that you've partnered with, that's the prime contractor, is using your invoice dollars to pay their own expenses. And all of a sudden you're 1, 2, 3, 12 months behind receiving any money for the invoices that you've submitted as a subcontractor. It becomes a problem. I've been in that situation. I've been down $1 million in arrears. The prime contractor ended up filing for bankruptcy, never saw a dime. It was a horrible lesson learned. Insist on an escrow account. Oftentimes they won't want to sign an escrow account, in which case that tells you a little bit of something about the business that you might be dealing with. If it were me and a large prime wanted me to set up an escrow account, it would be conditional that if I miss 2 or more invoice payments after the government has paid me, then the escrow account kicks in. But at least afford me the courtesy of not having that escrow account in place unless I prove that I can't pay my invoices. So think about that when you're working with your business partners, about setting up an escrow account to protect your invoice dollars. Number 16, large businesses are essential to help you grow your business. However, and as a large business in many of my NAICS codes, I understand both sides of the fence. I like to leverage my small business size status. Well, don't you need a small business? But at the same time, when you're a large business, you don't want to share any more than you have to share. So consider the fact that at some point, when you outgrow your size standards, no matter what kind of relationship you have with that large prime, and you think it's personal, the large prime will never think it's personal. They'll like working with you. They'll enjoy all those things. But the only reason they're subcontracting dollars to small businesses is to get and meet small business goals. So once you no longer can satisfy their goals, unless you have some widget or some piece of software or something that's so unique that they need you, they can deliver generally 100% of the services without buying from you. So keep that in mind as you're building these relationships, that you won't always, even though you feel it's a personal relationship with that large prime, just recognize the fact that there's going to come a point in time where they may no longer need you. And that's a tough pill to swallow. It was for me with a lot of large primes that I thought I had a great relationships with. Well, I did, but once I couldn't fulfill that goal anymore, they moved on to the next small business. Number 17, get involved in industry associations. I started this from the start. I started going to conferences. I joined, well, I'm actually a founder. I'm a plank holder of the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. I joined the Professional Services Council. I joined the Small Business Asian Pacific Islander Association. And the reason I do that is because not only do they form strong business relationships, but they help you with regulatory changes. There are so many changes occurring to the FAR or things being proposed in Congress that we have no idea about, nor is there an expectation that you should be able to keep up with them. By staying involved with these industry associations, they will push this information to you so that you can remain current on what your regulatory requirements are. Again, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And the same applies when you're dealing with federal contracting. And the number of business relationships you can glean from these industry associations is crazy. The Professional Services Council, I sit next to large prime CEOs. I tend to be one of those people who ask lots of questions during panel sessions and things like that. And I've had large primes come up to me and say, wow, you really sound knowledgeable about what you're talking about. Give me your business card. I think I want to do business with you, because they feel that they don't have to teach me the business. So use those industry associations to your advantage. This is another one, 18. Make plans early that you're not going to sell your company. We talked about this back on the previous page. One of the things I learned was being disciplined, which is a challenge. Once you're through the 8A programs, or you've taken your small business loans and you've paid them off, and now you can take distributions from your company. If you're an S corporation, rather than taking those distributions and going on a lavish vacation, take those distributions, a $200,000 distribution, and give it to someone who can manage your finances for you. Invest your money so that if there's a time that you can never sell your business, over 10 years of $200,000 over 10 years, you all of a sudden have a nice little nest egg should you not be able to sell your company. So I'm cautioning you that when you're profitable, you're not violating bank covenants, you're not violating SBA regulations, that you take your distributions, but be disciplined with how you use them. And that's really tough because all my friends were going on lavish trips or buying brand new expensive cars. And Heidi was still driving her Nissan that was 10 years old and not going on vacations, not buying my kids new school clothes at the beginning of a school year. It's tough, but it's important that you do for your future. Number 19, get out from behind your desk and visit the customer, your employees, other businesses, visit the Hill. I have to say that probably one of the best things I do well is making sure that my employees know who I am. So I have regular luncheons with my employees. I have opportunities where I'll just pop in at a customer site, call them, ask them to, escort me in and just walk through and say hello to the employees. Talk to them. Let them know you're a human being. Ask them important questions like, what can we do better in the company? It was interesting. We give $25 gift cards around Thanksgiving time to our employees. And the reason I wanted to do that was so that we could fund buying a turkey for your holiday tables at Thanksgiving. And after about the third year, I was visiting with some employees, and one of my employees asked me why it was a Safeway gift card instead of a Visa card. And what went through my head was that the reason I gave Safeway cards was because the purpose was to buy a turkey. But then the employee reminded me that if it was truly a gift, why did I care what they did with the money? Sometimes they still lived at home with their parents and their parents were buying a turkey. And it dawned on me that sometimes you get the best advice from your employees. We no longer give gift cards from food stores. We now give Visa cards or American Express cards at the holidays and let them use the money for what they want. Your employees or your customers will value the time that you make with them. One of the things I have not personally done myself enough of is reaching out to your congressman and senator. 25 years in business. I know who my congressmen, I know who my senators are. Never visited that much. In hindsight, I wish I had spent more time with them so that when funding was deobligated from one of my contracts recently that required I lay off 87 people in less than 24 hours due to lack of funding, I could have reached out to my congressman or senator and said, can you help with this? Instead, these people had no idea who Heidi Gerding was, who HeiTech Services was. Make sure you build those relationships early because you never know when you're going to need to call upon them. Number 20, join CEO peer groups. There's a lot of them out there. I've been a member of Vistage. I've been a member of Inc. CEO Project. Vistage is really for startup companies. And once you've kind of graduated from the $10 to $15 million company, you want to be challenged with companies of larger size that have more of the same challenges that you have at your size. Inc. CEO Project filled in the blank perfectly. These meetings are generally monthly or quarterly meetings to meet with peers in other industries. You process issues. So I'll sometimes process an issue about I'm having a hard time figuring out how to get rid of my controller, for instance, or my CFO, because I'm scared that they're the only ones who can manage the books. And how do you help me process this, or help me think of outside of the box thinking to take care of issues, or I'm going for more credit, or I'm going for whatever. Help me think outside the box. And these groups will process issues with you and give you incredible ideas that you never thought was imaginable. It's important for you sometimes to get outside the business and look into your business rather than being in the business every day. Number 21, be cautious about applying for awards that recognize you or the company. So when we start up a business, one of the things we believe validates our performance and the fact that we're a real business is recognition by industry. So you'll apply for some awards and you'll start winning some awards, and you get plaques and you get things, Small Business of the Year or whatever. One of the things I didn't realize at the time is it also made me very publicly accessible to my competitors, so that all of a sudden they started seeing HeiTech Services name around the block a lot. And all of a sudden they were targeting my contracts and they were targeting my employees and stealing those things from me. So it's a balance of knowing how much publicity you need versus making sure to protect your interests and not being too big of a target to your competitors. Just keeping a balance on those things. Number 22, be disciplined with business development meetings and work hard to ensure your pipeline is always filled with real opportunities. So leading from the front, Heidi Gerding led all of business development meetings. I have various search engines. I have some Deltec vehicles. I have something called FedMine, where I can look at my competitors' contracts and start planning. Although 2 years down the road sounds like a long time away, you need to have some in the hopper immediately, but also have some that you can target and capture a little bit longer in the pipeline so that you can bring those opportunities to fruition. Don't have meetings where there's never any accountability. There's never any notes taken and follow-up meetings held with how you're going to pursue those opportunities. There needs to be someone at the helm holding people accountable. If you're not the person to do that, then find the person who is going to be that person for you to lead those business development meetings. You have to be very disciplined. The government's a huge place. There's a lot of contract opportunities to be had. You just have to know where to look. Number 23, compliance is critical. Again, ignorance of the law is no excuse for violating the law. So you have to look towards industry experts through your industry associations and things like that to make sure that you're in compliance with your bank covenants, with your FAR clauses, with your terms and conditions, with anything that you're putting your name on or submitting a bid to the federal government. Make sure that you're in compliance. And don't be lulled into a false sense of security. Well, I'll stretch the truth this one time. No one's going to ask for my size. I'm just slightly outside the size standard, but no one's going to ask. That'll be the time someone asks. Someone protests. The SBA is in your face. They want the last 5 years worth of your tax revenue that you've shown. And they're going to do the math and find out. And the consequences are too, not only in terms of throwing your business out from ever doing business with the government again, but personally liable in terms of going to jail or financial penalties. Don't be lulled into a false sense of security. Number 24 was another challenge for Heidi Gerding, understanding your financials. I'm not a big numbers person. And one of the things I had on my board of advisors was a strong CFO who could pick up my financial reports and say, oh my God, what happened this past quarter? And I would look at him and say, how do you know that something happened this last quarter with one of my contracts? And he'd say, because it shows right here in the numbers. And he would start pointing to all these numbers. Make sure you understand your income statement and your balance sheet and your actual numbers versus your target rates that you're using. I've been through a divorce, and nothing becomes more important than understanding your financial numbers more than when you're going through a divorce and they're trying to value your company. So work with someone, either on your board of advisors, work with a CFO, work with your banker. Make sure you understand what those financial reports are reporting so that you can keep your finger on the pulse. Number 25. As you pursue work, don't overly rely on your small business set-asides unless you intend to remain small. HeiTech Services never intended to remain small. My idea was always to push past 50 million and get to 200 million in revenue in the blink of an eye. And then my Vistage coach, one of the groups that I belong to, industry groups that I belong to, quickly brought that back to realization. If we saw a 20% growth year over year, do you know how long it's going to take you to get to $200 million? And honestly, we all rely on our small business status heavily because we can compete at that level. Take a couple of opportunities every year and push yourself past that comfort zone and bid on a full and open competition. Get the feedback during a debriefing. You might have won it, which is all the better. But don't rely on your small business set aside standards to grow your business. It's not a good strategy. 26. If you find it difficult to execute on difficult decisions, find someone that can take that off your plate. So I found that as I've gotten older, when I was in my 30s, making difficult decisions was a no-brainer for me. I never had any issues with it. The Navy trained me really well to be decisive. And the older I've gotten, my kids have matured and I've become a little more mushy about things. I find that confronting people has become a little bit more of a challenge for me. So I rely on the president of my company to do some of those difficult things for me. Now, there are some decisions that I will candidly say, although I want you to do that for me, it's my job and I'm going to do it as difficult as it is. But don't hesitate to delegate some of those decisions to the president of your company or to some other person in a leadership role if you're struggling with making some of those decisions. Number 27, again, I've talked about this, visit your customers regularly. I've had customers where they give me satisfactory CPAR scores on a contract performance. And I'll go sit down with them and I'll meet with them and I'll talk to them about fitness reports that I had when I was in the Navy as an officer. And that if I didn't get marked all A's with recommended for accelerated promotion, I was probably not going to make it very far past 05, and how important that was to me. So I think that when you meet with your customers regularly, you're going to build up a cadence, you're going to build up a rapport, that you can have those candid discussions that say, although you feel that to get an above average or an outstanding score really takes Herculean efforts, just keep in mind that my competition's customers don't feel the same way and they're getting outstanding. So keep cadence with your customers, stay in touch with them, see if they'll do lunch with you, and keep those relationships solid so that when you need them, you can go to them. Number 28, be ethical in all your business dealings. I got to tell you that there's not a day that goes by that I am not lulled or someone tries to lull me to the dark side. Something sounds too good to be true. Just, lie on this a little bit or something like that. Stay true to who you are. I've always believed that I'm the one person that if I did something wrong, it wouldn't happen tomorrow. No one would find out about it till 10 years from now, and then it would come back to haunt me. I'm also a graduate of the Naval Academy, so the honor concept is very near and dear and important to me. Nothing's more important than keeping your reputation intact. And when I say I'm going to do something, when I make a verbal commitment to something, honor what you say you're going to do. Make sure that all you have is your reputation in the industry and keep it solid. Number 29, don't be afraid to hire people who are smarter than you are. Sometimes that's a challenge for some of us like me to think that there are people actually smarter than us, but there are. And when you bring those people to the table, they make your life significantly easier. Make sure that when you're hiring people that they bring skill sets that you don't have, that you're not as strong at, and that they can contribute to the success of your business. Don't be afraid to hire people that are smarter than you are. It's okay. Number 30, become an expert in small business programs. In the 25 years that I've been doing this, I've become very familiar with the FAR. I've become very familiar with the Code of Federal Regulations. I become very familiar with small businesses, with the Small Business Administration programs that are available, the rules and regulations, various GWAP vehicles, IDIQs, you name it. I'm kind of a plethora of information in this head. And as a result, you can get up and ask intelligent questions during sessions. And the large primes will appreciate that and say, all right, that's the third question she's asked, and that's a pretty smart question. Who is that person? It helps you build relationships beyond what you could have even imagined. Become an expert in small business programs as long as you're a small business, because oftentimes the large primes don't understand them as well as you do. Number 31, as the business grows and changes, be open and also eager isn't the right word, but be willing to change the staff out. When I started the business, we didn't have anything. And so hiring people into the business was a challenge for me because I didn't have much to offer them. The first couple of employees I hired, I had them keep their COBRA benefits. I paid their COBRA benefits for them because I didn't have a health plan. You had to have a group before you could have a health group plan. And what happened was you become very loyal to those people. But over time, those people are not going to be able to take you to the next level. So you have to keep in mind at what stage you're going to make sure that you keep pace with changing out the staff to keep pace with your growth. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. So just be prepared that change is inevitable. It's going to happen at different growth periods along the life cycle of your business. And don't be scared to make those staffing changes that you need to make. Number 32, be cautious of hiring family to the business. That's a tough one. We all want to hire our kids. We all want to hire our brothers, our sisters, or something else. It's the perception that ensues as a result of hiring family to the business. Candidly, I do have some family members in my business. A couple of my children are involved in my business. I chose not to hire them. My business partner ended up hiring them. I was not happy with the decision. And the conversation that I had went like this with them. If you can't work harder than everyone else in the company, this is the wrong place for you. Because people are going to look at you and think that you're getting a break because your mom owns the business. And I don't want those perceptions to exist. Be aware of people's perceptions when you're hiring family members into the business. They're not always positive. Number 33, being a protege. Ask for regular meetings with the CEO of your mentor. Regardless of the size of the business, use that time to ask questions to provide professional development. We're always in a learning mode. So I use those moments with the CEOs of some very large corporations to ask them, what's your biggest challenge this quarter? Tell me about being a publicly traded company and how the stockholders have an impact on your decisions. Tell me about your board of directors. What does your board of directors do, and how much do they influence your decisions? Think big. Think about decisions that when you get to that point, that some of these CEOs are going to be able to share information with you. The other thing I've learned in life is people like to talk about themselves, including me. So one of the best pieces of advice I can give to you when going to a conference or a meeting is to approach people that you don't know and say, where are you from? Tell me about your business. Where did you go to school? Do you have children? Because people love to talk about themselves. It will get a dialogue going. Same's true with a CEO of a large corporation. Use their experience and their business acumen to your advantage as you grow your business. Likewise, being a mentor. Again, a little more challenging for me because my time is very precious. So when you're mentoring a smaller company, what's in it? And don't lull yourself into this false sense of, well, I'm doing it for the greater good because, this is a service-disabled veteran and I want to help you out. That's great. But the truth is, a lot of your small business, if you will, medium-sized businesses that mentor smaller firms are because they get to keep 60% of the revenue on a contract. rather than a traditional prime sub relationship in 49%. You have the SBA's mentor-protege relationship. Once the SBA approves that relationship, you can spin off a joint venture and keep up to 60% of the revenue on that contract, even though you're the large company. Be realistic and candid with your partners when you're partnering with them, what your intentions are. Again, open dialogue, being honest and candid just keeps things clean. Number 35, flipping contracts. I'm a graduated 8A. I've outgrown some of my size standards. And so some of the contracts I've held, customers want to keep me, but I've either outgrown the size standard or I'm no longer 8A. So you have to flip those, find a partner that you're going to do business with. One of the things I try to be candid about when flipping a contract is to let the small business know that this is an excellent opportunity for you to be a prime contractor with a small business, medium-sized business that knows the work and understands the relationship. But don't lose sight of the fact that this is my customer. Don't think you're going to steal the customer. This customer's gonna probably want to continue to do business with me. And so when the contract is over, I'm probably going to look for a new small business prime contractor. Again, candid conversations with businesses before you enter into them. They're either going to say, look, I'm not interested in that at all, or they're going to say, no, I appreciate the fact that you're honest with me, and the past performance I'm going to gain from priming this one contract is going to benefit me going forward. Just be honest with your partners. 36, insurance understanding. Whew. Boy, there's a lot of insurances out there. And there's so many questions to consider surrounding personal insurance. And I'm certainly not the expert in insurance, but something you should consider as you're looking at personal insurance is company-funded personal insurance, and whether you're going to use it to fund a buy-sell agreement. Are you going to use it in case you die prematurely and you can't sell the business, that your family is left with something? And when you get to a point where the cost of life insurance outweighs the benefits of having it as you get older, 63 years old right now, I need less money to live on. So is the cost of the life insurance I'm going to pay for worth what I'm paying? The other thing I would recommend when you're looking at, especially life insurance, is the younger you are to get those policies in place, the better off you are. Long-term care coverage, life insurance, because you're generally healthier. The older you get, the more expensive the coverage is going to become because you start to have health problems. I was fortunate that I got a lot of my policies set up in my 30s, and those things are benefiting me today. Just get together with somebody that you trust, or with another service-disabled veteran-owned small business, and ask them who they use for insurance so that you can reach out to a known entity and not have to reinvent the wheel. Work with somebody that's a trusted partner. Number 37, if you set yourself up as an S corporation, understanding when to transition from tax reporting on a cash basis to tax reporting on an accrual method. I could probably spend a long time talking to you about this. One of the things I was woefully unaware of, but thankfully I had my banker, my accountant, who kept me in the know on this, is as you're building a small business, most small businesses will work on a cash method for tax accounting purposes, but an accrual method for accounting purposes. And what that means is when it comes to paying taxes at the end of the year, you're only paying tax on a cash method based on the money that you've taken in. So in December, you may all be used to the fact that you're trying to throw out as many invoices when you're on a cash method of tax payment as you can, because you can accrue those dollars without having to pay tax on them. Now, all of a sudden, you've been in business for 15 years and you're starting to outgrow your size standards. You've been fairly successful. You're sitting at about $25, $30 million in revenue. And all of a sudden, your revenue starts to decline. You want to change at that point to an accrual basis for tax purposes. And the reason is, remember, on the tax basis, You only pay taxes on the cash that you've collected. So all of a sudden, January and February and March, you're now collecting money on invoices that were invoiced in October, November, and December. On an accrual basis, you're only paying money on the money that's been accrued. It's the last bullet point here that's important and salient for all of you, is when you convert, you're only allowed to do it once in the lifetime of a corporation. The deferred income formula is the second to the last bullet here. I won't bore you with reading it. It's all here. But if the company chooses to convert their tax reporting method from cash to accrual basis, your taxes are all of a sudden going to be higher. Know that you have 4 years to spread those tax payments over instead of making one single payment, which is going to help keep a lot of cash in the company. Work closely with your accountant, work closely with your banker. But as you start looking at your pipeline and your backlog, and you start to see that your revenue is going to start to drop off instead of from year to year continue to climb, go back to look at this slide. This slide is going to be critical to making sure you retain as much cash in the company as you can. Number 38, understanding R&D tax credits. I had no idea what these things were. I had no idea because HeiTech Services is not a research and development company. Research and development has IRS criteria, 4-part test, uncertainty, process of, anyways, you can read those things. And so examples, when I was able to take advantage of this, were upgrading our financial systems, developing software tools to maximize productivity. We have a software tool in the company that we use where our project managers will input, or actually our quality assurance people will input productivity information, timeliness, how many widgets someone processed in an hour, how accurate the widgets were that they processed. That piece of software tool that we used is considered research and development. Upgrading your hardware or software in the company when you're buying new things to stay up to speed with what's going on in the industry. All of those things can result in a research and development tax credit. Just become familiar with them. There are companies out there that specialize in helping you identify what things in your company would qualify for research and development tax credits and then help you track them. Number 39, congressional representatives, when to use them. Talked about this already. I wish that I had built closer relationships with my congressmen and senators before I needed them. I talked about defunding projects, just making sure that your voice is heard. I think that making sure they know your company name is critical when you're dealing in federal contracting, because you never know when they can be there to help. And that is my pearls of wisdom. I hope that you benefit from this. I hope that somebody else may be able to add to this list of things as we go along. And don't hesitate to reach out to me if anyone needs any help or, templates, things that a service-disabled veteran-owned small business would help another veteran with. We're here to help. That's what we're for. Thank you for your time.
Heidi, thank you. This is amazing. I see a book in your future, actually. So hopefully you'll put that on your list of to-dos for the GovCon community is pearls of wisdom from Heidi. And
I think the book is going to be about things I can't believe employees do.
Well, with that, I am going to say thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our Charlie Mike series, and we will see you next time.
Bye.